I think her legacy is that she is the first mammal in space that returned alive and lived. One of the reasons she was chosen was because she was more tolerant of being trapped in that little tiny capsule that she was in for long periods of time, and apparently she was much easier to handle. They had about 25 squirrel monkeys to choose from that they bought from a pet shop in Miami. She came from Peru, was captured in Peru.
Monkey-Eyed Baker became famous in 1959, enclosed in a special spacecraft like this one and wearing a special spacesuit to protect her from the effects of space flight. She rode a Jupiter rocket to the edge of space. The 10,000 mile per hour ride was completed on May 28, 1959, and Monkey-Eyed Baker became a space hero.
Her living was a continuing benefit. We could feel much safer with exposing humans to that environment because we saw no harm that was done by her venture in space. That was a valuable message, a valuable test, and that was what she was sent up there for. She was brought here from Pensacola at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola. She'd been there for 10 years after her flight. I had a friend that was a year ahead of me in vet school, and Ed Buckby, when he found out that he was going to be able to get Miss Baker transferred to Huntsville, needed a veterinarian to be on call. So he approached Dr. Popejoy, and Dr. Popejoy, as most veterinarians don't really care that much about treating monkeys, he declined, and he knew I was young and hungry. And so he's recommended that he check me, and Ed came to me, and I was more than willing to take over any extra job. About that time, you just didn't see a lot of monkeys, and they were not easy to handle. We could handle a 1-pound monkey. That was manageable. She was a dominant animal. She had husbands, Big George, that came with her. He was well-mannered because he was well-trained by her. When the food came in, he sat back and waited till she got what she wanted, and then he would get what was left. Then he died, and normal Norman, we had a wedding out here for that. She never got out of the cage. She couldn't be handled much. Sometimes she really objected to being handled, and of course, we handled her with leather gloves all the time. The first thing she did when she got here was one of the attendants went in to try to catch her husband, and when he was attempting to catch him, she took offense of that and bit him on the back. She was no softy, and you weren't going to go up and pet her and handle her, but she was entertaining. The kids loved to come by. I mean, they would sit and just watch her for as long as they could while they were here. She was an instant attraction. I mean, she would have hundreds of letters every month because they had kids coming through all the time, and they would be fascinated with her more so than some of the space stuff. It wasn't long after that we started going to TV shows. I didn't pass the screen test, but Miss Baker did, and so she got to go on the air. But we went to the Mike Douglas show in Philadelphia, and then we later went to Good Morning America.
Well, we have about 60 or 70 letters a day from children throughout the world who read about Baker, and this mail is answered with a little autographed picture of Baker sent back to the child. So right. She gets a lot of mail, a lot of publicity, and George, however, does not. And this has created an emotional problem with the animal.
The problems you face in the space program.
And then the last one was in Hollywood, and that was a Dinah Shore show. Michael Jackson was on the day we were there, and I got to sit next to his mother during the show, so we had fun traveling with her. When we transported her, we had to take her just in a regular dog cage. I remember the first trip we made with her, we went to the Benjamin Franklin Hotel, which is a big famous hotel in Philadelphia, and walking through the lobby with 2 monkeys sticking out, you know. It was quite an attraction. The humidity was very high and the temperature was high in her cage. That was more like her normal environment where she came from in Peru in the jungles. So we went in to try to get her in a more normal situation, turned on a hot shower and let it run, and kept her in the bathroom with the hot water running all the time while she was staying there. On our 25th anniversary, one of the writers for the Huntsville Times interviewed me, and I got a call from England and asked if I would answer some questions, and I said, yeah, I would have to. And one of the questions they asked was, do you think that her trip into space had anything to do with her living so long? And I said, no, I don't. I think that her controlled environment, her good diet, and her indomitable spirit were the things that made her live this long. And they said, well, would you be willing to be interviewed by the BBC? Everybody's promised 15 minutes of fame. And I said, this is it. And it was, because I hadn't had another one since. 2 or 3 weeks after that interview, Ed called me and said, we've got a letter we're going to send you that was addressed to you at the Space Center, and says, we hearers cannot believe that anyone would be so inhumane. Won't you get that monkey down straight away? When they said on the BBC that she had been shot into space 25 years ago, this poor person thought she was still up there. And we were so inhumane as to leave her stranded in space for 25 years. And that was quite comical. I didn't answer the letter because I didn't have a reply to that. When she was 27 years old, David called me one day and said, Miss Baker is down in her cage and she's unresponsive. I said, well, bring her to my office. And you can imagine you can't get 6 cc's of blood out of a 1 pound monkey, but I was able to get just a drop or two of blood, and we put it on a little dipstick. And of course, when we put the blood on there, it immediately turned dark, and we knew it was kidney failure. And there was not much I could do to help her. And I said, if anything can be done, they could do it at Auburn at the veterinary school. And we transported her down there, and she lived only 2 days after that. So she didn't have to go through a long agonal phase or anything before she passed away. And I went down and picked up her remains and prepared her for burial, and we had a little ceremony out here. I hope her legacy will continue, because she was one of the first steps that we had to take to get astronauts on the moon.
And after an exhausting day of greeting visitors to the Alabama Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, she does her thing, just as she did after splashdown on a historic day in 1959, curls up and takes a nap.